Welcome everybody to this live stream of Bravo Motivation. Today, I'm going to give you all the details about Bravo Motivation. I created the Bravo Motivation process somewhere between 2009 and 2014, and I'll give you the history of that. I'm not going to try and sell you anything. Everything that I'm showing is free for you. In fact, I'll do one better. For everybody who is on this live stream, okay? Later on in the live stream, here's what I'm going to do for you. This is another one of my books. This is an ebook, not a traditional book, and it is called The 15 Traits of Highly Successful People. So here's what I'm going to do for everybody who has taken time out of their day to join my live stream. Later on, there you go. I will give you a link so that you can download this ebook for free. It normally sells for $29 US. You're going to get it for free today, but later on in the live stream, as a thank you for joining me. Now let's get back to Bravo Motivation. But before we talk about Bravo Motivation, what it does for you, I got to give you a little bit of history and context as to how Bravo Motivation was created. And also, before we go further, I'm running 3 screens here, camera, my mic, PowerPoint, all this fun stuff. So if I have a few glitches, I apologize. The live stream will go on. I will get to the end, but hey, it's technology, okay? So also, if you have any comments, any questions, please leave them in the chat. At the end of the live stream, I will review the chat and I will try to answer as many questions as possible. All right, so please leave them in the chat. Now getting back to Bravo Motivation. So as I mentioned, okay, I created Bravo Motivation somewhere between 2009 and 2014, and here's the genesis. When I was growing up, I have to give you a little bit of history about me that'll explain Bravo Motivation to you as we go further along. Most people considered my traits to be, nice, genuine, helpful, empathetic, etc. Traits, not habits. Then I got into the corporate world. All right, the corporate world is very, very addictive. Okay, they reward bad behavior. Right? And over the years in the corporate world, in my 30s, I became not so nice a person. Now, in the corporate world, I was considered a genius because I was aggressive, I was ruthless, okay, and I can admit it now, right? But the nice traits within me, compassion, kindness, kept getting pushed to the background, and the aggressive traits kept getting rewarded. In the meantime, while I was winding my way up the corporate ladder, I also published a few books that received a good reviews, good acceptance from the public. So that even, filled my head even bigger. Okay? Yeah, if you had known me at that point in time, I guarantee you would not have liked me as a person. And I can admit that. So these are some of the books that I published. I published a total of 7 traditional books, and then I forget now how many ebooks I published, because lately in the last 5 years, ebooks has been all the craze. So I've been publishing ebooks, right? So I kept publishing books. They kept getting accepted, in the world, in the industry, and my head kept getting bigger. Well, here's the problem with that approach, okay? Your traits will keep following the path of least resistance until one of two things. Either you are going to make the effort. Takes a long time, takes months. Habit you can break in 15 days or so. Traits takes months to change, or a trait will change when the person upstairs gives you a swift kick in the backside, okay, or something drastic happens, a life-changing event. Well, that event for me happened in 2009. I think it was April of 2009. I had a massive heart attack. In fact, the doctors at that point told my wife 2 more minutes and they wouldn't have been able to revive me. Well, by the grace of God, I'm still here. Now, one would think, okay, that after that massive an event, I would try to change. Well, that wasn't good enough for me apparently. So I was out of commission for about 3 weeks. I got up, I went back, okay, into the corporate world. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, in 2004, I started my own consulting company. I had employees, we were doing very well. So, 2009, 3 weeks after a massive heart attack where I almost died, I go back to work, and guess what? I believe now I'm invincible. Nothing can stop me, so I keep going even harder. Well, he had other plans. He sent me a second kick. Exactly 7 weeks after my first heart attack, I had a second one, okay? So, not a good scenario, but that woke me up, okay? That made me realize, hey, guess what? I'm not invincible. None of us are invincible. Life is short, okay? Live life as if, tomorrow is not guaranteed. Remember, you're going to die someday. I don't mean that in a depressing way. We were all born. We're all going to die. And then I took my experiences between those 2 heart attacks, and actually it was not just 2 heart attacks, it was 2 heart surgeries as well. I forgot to mention that part. And I wrote a book. It was called Remember Thou Art Mortal. And the purpose of that book was to teach people how to live life, remembering that, hey, you know what? There's no guarantees. Live life in the moment. Learn to be compassionate. Learn to enjoy life instead of being aggressive, instead of, chasing after just one thing. Well, this book, not only did it receive good reviews, it actually received several awards. One of them being the Reviewer's Choice Award, which is published on the front of the book. Now, after the success of that book in 2011, I'd already written some of the concepts of Bravo Motivation before. But after the success of that book, I formalized that process and created formally the Bravo Motivation process, which I trademarked in 2014. And that book was called If Not Now, When? I mean, if you can't live your life now, when are you going to live your life, right? An introduction to Bravo Motivation. Now that is what I'm going to discuss here today. So before we get into the depths of Bravo Motivation, I mentioned some of my traits earlier, how my traits were changing. So let us take a few brief moments and discuss traits versus habits. So we're discussing traits versus habits, and it is documented in this book, but since I'm giving you this book, I wanted to give you some background on the difference between traits and habits and why it is important to know, what are traits, what are habits. Traits are the ones that will serve you in the long run to achieve what you need to achieve. Habits are easy to form, they're easy to break. Habits usually become unconscious. Once they get formed, they become unconscious. For example, you may have a habit of brushing your teeth as soon as you wake up, drinking a cup of tea or water or hot milk before you go to bed. Once you do it for about 2 weeks, your body remembers and it becomes unconscious. You will keep doing it. Okay, that's a habit. Now, repetitive behavior causes habits and reinforces them. However, these are not parts of your personality. Right? Sorry, one of my other screens just went to sleep. So habits are acquired through practice. Brushing your teeth in the morning is a habit. Exercising regularly is a habit. Okay. Traits, they are more of the enduring qualities that are within an individual. Okay. Traits are usually personality based. They are well formed, deep ingrained. They take a while, as I mentioned earlier, they take a while to form, but they also take a while to change. They will, unless you have a life-changing event, okay? Traits influence the way you behave. Habits influence what you do. Traits influence the way you behave, the way you react to a situation. Like I mentioned, I was the same individual, and if I was presented with the same circumstances before where I was aggressive, I would try to be more empathetic. I would try to understand, hey, listen, rather than, hey, get this done or else. Now I would be the type of person who says, hey, you know what, let us figure out why it's not getting done and let's find a way to get it done. You see, that's a different trait, aggressiveness versus empathy, right? So traits can be influenced by biological environments, physical environments. If you're constantly in a stress-related environment, you will be agitated, you cannot help it. Now there are ways to fix traits, okay? There are ways to change traits, right? You have to be diligent, right? You have to very, very consciously make the effort to change your traits. And this doesn't happen, okay, in a matter of weeks. You're talking about several, I would say a minimum of 6 months to a year to change a trait, unless you have something drastic happen in your life, and hopefully that's not the case. We don't want anything drastic happen to anybody. Trust me, I went through it. Not a pleasant situation. Would not recommend it to anybody. So, in order to change traits, right, you need conscious effort. Now, this book here gives you the 15 traits of highly successful people. And I'm emphasizing traits because I've read books that say the 15 habits of highly successful people. And when I read them, they say, well, guess what? All the millionaires wake up at 5:30 in the morning and they drink a cup of coffee before 6. Well, I can go and interview another 100 people who work in construction, and I can say, guess what? All the construction workers wake up at 5:30 in the morning and drink a cup of coffee or tea before 6. That doesn't make them millionaires. That doesn't make them successful. Their inner traits, right, make them successful. Now, after having reviewed tons and tons and tons of data, okay, I came up with 15 traits that I find in successful people. Now, success is a very, it's a funky word. We're going to discuss that next. That's the first part of Bravo Motivation, is a discussion on what is success. All right? That is why I'm giving you this book, because you can use this book along with all the information I'm sharing today to create success in your life, to create fulfillment in your life. And that is where I'm trying to go today. So now let us get into the meat of Bravo Motivation, into the actual details of Bravo Motivation. So we're talking about how to define success, right? I mean, you all know me as a success coach. Now, what do I do? In fact, I consider one of my biggest achievements as a success coach is to helping somebody who was in the Coast Guard, a senior officer, convincing him, showing him how he could retire. He was afraid to retire. And that was his success, right? So success doesn't just mean what we traditionally believe in society. If you look at society from a very young age, right, we are taught about success in just a matter of two things. How much money am I making? Are you making a ton of money? Or, how well are you doing at work? How fast are you climbing up the corporate ladder? Are you being successful at work? Are you being successful at this? Are you achieving this? So success is purely taught to us as youngsters, right, as a very, very achievement-focused phenomenon, and specifically related to material things and gains. Fame, fortune, money. Fortune and money are the same thing, I guess. But recognition, these are the things that we are taught. These are what we are told is success, right? I find that very limiting. I'm going to give you just one example because I'm going to deal with this a little bit later on. I'll give you one example now. Let us say there is a gentleman, Joe somebody, what we would consider from society's point an average person. He gets through his schooling, he goes to work every day for 35, 40 years, does nothing, outstanding in terms of being recognized in the world, does not become famous, earns a steady salary, raises a family. Let's say he raises 2 kids, okay? Kids grow up, they go to college, they start their own lives, and then he retires. Now, if I look at society's traditional definition of success, well, Joe, somebody was not successful. But ask yourself, if that's what Joe wanted to do, his goal was to provide for his family, raise his family, make his children independent. Wasn't that a success? Wasn't Joe a success? Right? Think about that for a second. Now look at this slide. Okay, if you look at these individuals, right, and I tell you, hey, are these people successful? Would you consider these people a success? You know what? All of you say, absolutely. Why? Why do you consider them a success? Well, you got a very famous movie star, Bollywood movie star. You got in the middle a British and Bollywood movie star. And finally, last but not the least, you got a person who started a small company, in the 1980s. Today, we call that company Microsoft. Okay, so by the traditional definition of success, these people are successful. They're well known. They're well recognized. They have fame. They have amassed massive amounts of money, right? So fame, fortune, recognition, all the things that society says they have done. So according to society, these people are successful. I agree. That is one definition of success, and maybe that is what they wanted to do, right? Maybe Bill Gates, his entire goal in life was to create something that was so large that it outlasts generations, and he has done that with Microsoft. Maybe Sir Amitabh Bachchan, wanted to be a huge movie star. I mean, he's a mega movie star in Bollywood, right? So then he is successful because that's what he wanted to do. But I'm going to give you a few other examples. Right? Look at these people. Okay? One of them was imprisoned for 27 years. One of them, the one in the middle, died of a stroke at the age of 67 without anybody there to help him. Right? And of course, the person right in the beginning, right? He wasn't rich. Okay? So if you look at all these people, they weren't rich. During their lifetimes, right? They did not amass wealth. They did not climb up the corporate ladder. But think about it. Okay? You have one person who was the father of a nation. Mahatma Gandhi was the father of a nation. You have the person in the middle who painted what is considered one of the most enigmatic paintings in history, the Mona Lisa. And last but not the least, Dr. Nelson Mandela freed South Africa. He achieved freedom for South Africa. None of them had money during their lifetime. Now think about it. Would you consider them successful? I would. Right? So the definition of success, I think, goes far beyond just money, corporate, fame, fortune, recognition, etc. Now let's think about this alternate definition of success. Let's discuss that for a second. So using this alternate definition, let us figure out how we define success, or how I define success, and I'll define it for you. Before we go there, a couple of other examples, right? Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, Vincent van Gogh, Henry David Thoreau, Louisa May Alcott, right? Emily Bronte. These are all famous authors, poets. They did not achieve traditional success in their life. And I can go listing, Herman Melville, Emily Dickinson, all these people, right? If you remember their books, you will be, oh my God, great book. But during their lifetime, they did not achieve success. However, they persisted doing what they were doing because that is what gave them joy. Okay? They did what they thought they needed to do. They felt successful, right? Their success was defined by achieving those things that they did in their life, right? So success is no longer, in my opinion, just limited to what society says, but success is defined in individual terms. Personal success, what do I need to do to feel successful? What is my definition of success, right? Success is an achievement of your personal goals as an individual. And it doesn't have to be at work. It could be at work, but doesn't necessarily. Think of Joe somebody. His goal in life was to raise a successful family. So in his mind, he was successful. Right? Not everybody needs to follow society's definition of success. So we, as individuals, need to identify what we think is success. And it may change towards our life or throughout our life. There was a time, I told you, when for me, corporate success was all that mattered, right? Today, my success is disseminating knowledge. Right? I want to share the things I've learned, the experiences, and help other people build their best life. And every time somebody, sends me a comment and says, "Oh, thank you so much for this message," or "We appreciate what you have provided," or when I'm doing my speaking seminar and somebody says, "Oh my God, I heard you speak and that changed me." Guess what? I consider that successful. Whether I make a penny or not is secondary. Yes, we all have to make money. We all have bills to pay. Okay, the tax man doesn't go away. The lights, the electric company needs money from you. You need money for food. Yes, we all have to make an income. But that doesn't have to be your sole purpose in life. Simple matter. Work to live. Don't live to work. Well, following on, right? Your goals and aspirations, they could be academic. Somebody who's a student, right? And it doesn't have to necessarily be a young person. I know of people that in their 50s and 60s have gone and started a field of study and kept studying because that is what they want to do. It could be professional, right? In your business life, somebody could say, "Hey, my entire goal in life is to climb this corporate ladder." That's okay, because that is their success, right? It could be personal, like Joe somebody. "Hey, my entire goal in life was to," Joe somebody's entire goal was to raise a successful family, make sure his family is well taken care of, right? That is success. It could be in your relationship. Somebody wants to make sure they have a wonderful relationship. They maintain close relationships with their parents, with their siblings, with their spouse, with their children. And that is success. And I mentioned, it doesn't have to exclude money. We all have to make, an income to live. But income doesn't equal success. Monetary success doesn't equal success. Fame and fortune doesn't equal success. Inside, you have to ask yourself what it is that is going to be making me happy. That is what success is. So moving on, all right, success is also a continuous process when we define it in this new way, right? Success is subjective, first of all, right? Everybody's success is slightly different than everybody else's. And I can see that my screen is, I'm going to move myself from this corner. Let's see if I do this without breaking anything. All right, hopefully that's better. I know you guys missed out on some of the wording, so I'm making sure. And by the way, before I proceed, okay, please feel free to take screen captures, take notes, whatever else you need to do, right, in order to retain this information. Please feel happy to take screenshots. I don't restrict anything. I'm trying to share. All right. So coming back to, we were talking about success, right? So success is a journey. And here's what I'm going to give you an example of, right? I've said in one of my previous messages that, hey, success is not a conclusion. Failure is not a conclusion. The journey continues. Right? Think about Thomas Edison. Right? Everybody knows the story. He tried over 6,000 different elements to make the filament for a light bulb. And he finally succeeded after more than 6,000 tries. And when he was interviewed, he was asked, how is it, that you kept going after 6,000 tries? And he says, well, I didn't fail. I just learned of 6,000 ways how not to build a light bulb. But when he built the light bulb, brought light into all our homes, right? Of course, now we're all using LED, but for 100 plus years, the filament incandescent lamp, also known as the Edison bulb, was the standard, right? We all used those for many, many, many decades, and now suddenly, actually for more than 100 years, and now suddenly we have LED lights and different things. But think about it, he made an invention, right, that lasted almost 100 years as the standard. Now ask yourself, Edison could have said, hey, guess what? I made this invention. I'm done. I'm going to sit. He did not. If you go look up his history, and I got to read this for you so I don't make a mistake. Edison had 1,093 patents to his name. Read that number again. 1,093. 1093. Okay? They included an earlier version of the phonograph. A lot of things, right? So you think about this, earlier movie picture camera, one of the earliest. So he didn't just stop, right? And say, okay, I'm done, all right? Now Edison, okay, he's way up in the sky, but let's talk about us as individuals. Let's say, one of your goals, and I'm going to relate this to work, is to become a manager. What happens when you become a manager? Let's say you got the promotion, okay, I became a manager, I'm done, I'm going home. No, you're not, right? Because you're going to now shift your success line. Okay, you're going to say, well, maybe I want to become a director. Now let me try that in terms of, let's say you're an artist, you want to do paintings, right? And you paint a beautiful butterfly. What do? You say, okay, I'm done. I painted a beautiful butterfly. I'm putting my brush down. I'm done forever. No, right? You think, okay, you know what? Let me try and paint a beautiful bird. You see, you moved your success line, right? And for me, these days, my success is if a few of you, hopefully all of you, but a few of you who have joined me today for this live stream, learn something. Right? I don't care if you respond to me and say, oh, this was great, not great. I just hope to share knowledge. So sharing knowledge has become my success these days. Guess what? McAfee is trying to run an update. Live streaming, right? Anyway, so coming back to, right, I am trying to, share. For me, that journey. People have asked me, a lot of people have asked me, why are you doing this now? Right? Why are you spending all this time? Well, I enjoy it. I enjoy learning. I have to learn a lot of new tools, all right? I enjoy sharing. So that is how I am creating my success. Now ask yourself, how are you going to create your success? What is going to be your journey? How are you going to learn from that journey? Right? And how are you going to grow? It's all the things here on the screen. I just repeated them in a different way. So these are the questions you need to answer, right? I'll repeat them again. What is your journey? What is your success? How are you going to grow and learn during your journey? And how are you going to use that going forward? That will help you define your success and your journey. So moving on. So all right, we are talking now about motivation. Right? We have discussed what success means, how to identify your own personal success, how to apply your traits to your personal success. Now let's talk about motivation. The dictionary, defines motivation as giving somebody an impetus to do something. Okay? Giving somebody a reason, impetus, reason. Okay? Giving somebody a reason to do something. Right? Now, does that mean that reason always has to be external? Does that mean somebody else has to motivate you, or you have to motivate somebody else? Couldn't you just motivate yourself, right? So doesn't necessarily mean when you say give somebody a reason to act a certain way, you could give yourself a reason to act a certain way, to do something, right? So then that leads us to discuss internal versus external motivation. Now, internal motivation is inspiring somebody to do something. External motivation is forcing somebody to do something, all right? So, once again, right, does it have to be someone else forcing you? Or could you be forcing yourself? Sounds funky when I say it that way, but there is a reason I'm saying it that way. So let me give you the traditional definition of internal versus external motivation. Okay, everybody has heard of carrot and stick. You know, the boss at work tells you, hey, do this much or else you're going to get reprimanded or fired or something else. Okay? Do this much, right? And you're going to get a promotion, a bonus. You know, so don't do this, you get punished. Do at least more than this, you get rewarded punishment. But that is just one face of motivation. There's another face to internal and external motivation, and I'm going to explain it here right now. So we talked before about an artist, right, who paints a butterfly, likes it, then goes on to paint, a bird. I mean, and we talked about that in terms of success, right? Now let's talk about that same artist in terms of motivation. Okay? Let us say that artist paints the butterfly because they just love to paint. They love to create. Right? They want to make something beautiful. They don't care if somebody likes it or not. Okay? Their motivation at that point is internal. I'm going to take the example of another artist. Right? The only reason they're taking up painting is because they want to sell it or show it on social media, right? Now their motivation is external. Right? They have to convince themselves, force themselves to do painting because they want to gain something external. So they are forcing themselves to do something rather than inspiring themselves. Now the first artist who would create for the sake of creating, right? They're inspired to create. Somebody who's creating for the sake of achieving something external, they're forced to create. So think about that, right? I mean, same thing applies to academics. Okay? You know, somebody wants to study because they want to learn. All right? They love learning. I talked about before the 60-year-old person who starts a new field of study. Why? They love to learn. Now, the same person starts this course of study because they want to show someone else, hey, guess what? At 60, I can still learn. Okay? They're forcing themselves. They will not be having fun. See, when you are inspired, okay, you have fun with what you're doing. When you force yourself, you do not have fun. It becomes boring. All right? Just a thought process. Think about what I'm saying here. And one last example, right? Let's say there's a person who loves to work out, exercise. They go to the gym every day. They work out because it makes them feel good. They want to stay healthy. Now there's another person, who feels like exercising, who goes like, I have to go exercise. Why? Because others look at me and then they say, oh, look how fit you are. Their motivation is external, and that external motivation only lasts as long as that external stimuli exists. All right? For example, the painter. Okay, they're painting for the sake of social media. If they stop getting social media attention, they're going to say, you know what? No point in me painting anymore. The person who's studying for the sake of impressing someone, if the other person stops being impressed, they lose their interest to study. Same thing with the person who's exercising to impress others. However, the artist who's inspired, they don't care if somebody views their things on social media. They will keep painting because it's internal. It gives them joy. Remember, we talked about success being a process, right? That process gives them joy. Same thing with the person who works out for themselves. That gives them joy, it gives them satisfaction. The person who learns for themselves. So now, think about it this way. We're talking about internal motivation as being the prime driver for success. You have to feel internally motivated in order for you to feel successful. That brings us to the meat of Bravo Motivation. Hang with me while I change the slide. All right, we are now at Bravo Motivation. What is Bravo Motivation? Well, I told you how I created Bravo Motivation between 2009 and 2014. The Bravo in Bravo Motivation stands for believe, recognize, act, visualize, and obtain. See the words Bravo: believe, B, recognize, R, A, act, V, visualize, and O, obtain. That is what Bravo Motivation stands for. And today we're going to discuss believe, recognize, and act in tremendous detail. Visualize and obtain, I'm just going to give you a very brief intro to it, because the visualization process, the visualization exercises themselves take 30 to 45 minutes. So if I try to do that on this live stream, this will become a 4-hour live stream. We do not want to do that. So we will do a different live stream probably in a couple of weeks or so from now, maybe 3 weeks, where we discuss visualization, visualize, and obtain in greater detail. So now let us start about believe. So believe, what is believe? So as defined by Bravo Motivation, believe is the process of fully acknowledging and accepting your power and skills. Right? Now, when I say power and skills, people say, what do you mean by power? Everybody knows what skills is. What do you mean by power? Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to make a statement, okay? You and I, we have the power to change the face of this planet. Now, most people will say, I'm crazy, right? I'm going to prove it to you here. But you and I have the ability to change the face of this planet. Think about what I'm saying. Okay, we're just talking about changing the face of the earth. Okay? Think back to a time in your life when you were at the beach, or if you're not at the beach, in your garden, right? Somewhere outdoors. Okay, when you're at the beach, did you pick up some sand and move it? Or when you're in your garden, did you dig up a piece of soil so that you can plant a tree or plant a plant? Or when you're just outside, did you kick a stone? Guess what? When you move that grain of sand or that soil or that stone from one place to another on a very small scale, you change the face of the planet. Well, sounds great. Guess what? I changed the face of the planet. Well, guess what? Even an ant can do that. Okay? So when we are talking about powers and skills, it is important to realize that keep them in reference to what you are trying to achieve, what your goal in life is. All right? Great that we have the ability to change the face of the planet, but if my goal is not to build something outside, it doesn't really matter, So keep it restricted to what your goal in life is. All right? Now let's elaborate on this. Okay? At a fundamental level, whatever it is you want to do, all right, whatever goals, whatever objectives, whatever you want to achieve, at a fundamental level, your whole being should believe that you want to achieve it. Okay? That you're capable of achieving it. For example, I could say, I believe I'm going to climb the Himalayas. Right? Mount Everest, I'm going to climb it. Well, guess what? I told you earlier, I've suffered multiple heart attacks. It doesn't matter how much I say it, my mind knows, I can't walk 2 miles before I run out of breath. So how am I going to convince myself that I can climb the Himalayas? I can climb Mount Everest. So no matter how much I say it, my heart and soul and mind will not believe it. That is what I'm talking about at a fundamental level. Now, if I say, hey, my goal in life, okay, is to share knowledge, and I can believe I can share knowledge. Yes, that is something I can believe in wholeheartedly, because this is not just the forum for sharing knowledge. I share knowledge when I do my seminars, okay, or when some younger person comes to me and says, hey, I'm trying to do this and this, what would be the best way to do it, and I give them a few words of advice. I am still sharing knowledge, right? So when I say that my heart, soul, spirit, mind believes in that. Okay, so that is what I mean by fundamental belief. Your mind, your body, your soul has to believe that whatever you're saying you want to do, you're capable of doing. Okay, it has to be honest, and it cannot be superficial. I can sit there all day long and say, I believe I'm going to win the lottery. Okay, somewhere in the back of my mind, right, there will be something going, am I? Yeah. So this is what I mean by believe in terms of Bravo Motivation. Okay, you have to acknowledge and accept what your skills and powers are in terms of what you want to achieve in life. Okay, for example, I can, bad example but good example at the same time, I can say I want to play the piano. Well, my hands unfortunately are built like farmer hands, all right? They don't have a whole lot of dexterity, okay? So guess what? No matter how much I say that, not achievable, okay? So, ask yourself, what do I want to achieve, and do I believe that is achievable? At one point in time earlier, during one of my other videos, I said the only way to achieve something that is impossible is to first fundamentally believe that it is possible. Only then you can achieve it. So that is belief in terms of Bravo Motivation. Now, when we talk about belief, right, I talked about fundamentally believing. When I say fundamental belief, I'm talking about your inner purpose. This is something you have to say, hey, guess what? I believe wholeheartedly that is my purpose in life. Think about the artist, okay? What was their inner purpose? They wanted to create, right? Their inner purpose in life was to create. So when you talk about your inner purpose, right, does that bring you joy? I mentioned earlier, people ask me, hey, why are you going through all this trouble? Why are you creating these videos? Why? Because I want to share knowledge. And these, I believe, okay, that A, I'm capable of creating these videos. B, I'm capable of sharing knowledge. But I also believe that these videos are helping people. And that belief keeps me driving forward. That is my inner purpose, to share this knowledge, right? If I wanted to make money with Bravo Motivation, several people, just since I trademarked the name Bravo Motivation, I've had several companies come to me and tell me, hey, I'll give you a large sum of money just to buy that name and trademark from you. So if my goal was to make money, guess what? That's a lot easier way. I don't have to be sitting here doing that. So like I said, my inner purpose, my goal, and hence my goal, is sharing knowledge. Now with this, I'm going to caveat this and let you know, your goal is going to change throughout your life. When I was going to school, my goal was different. I wanted to achieve academic excellence. I wanted to learn. I told you about when I got in the corporate world. My goal then was to be, and we found out later on that wasn't a very good goal for my traits. But my goal was to be the youngest manager, the youngest director, the youngest at this, the youngest at that, the quickest at that. Well, that worked for me at a certain period in my life until I realized that it wasn't fulfilling. But at that point in my life, I believed that was my purpose. I was erroneous, but I believed it, and hence I kept driving towards it until I got that swift kick in the pants, in 2009. So, you have to identify what your purpose are, what activities bring you joy, peace, contentment, right? And what is it that you do even if you aren't getting paid? And think back, go back to that artist, Okay? They paint, not because somebody's paying them, because it brings them joy, because they love to create. So your goal, whatever you decide, your inner purpose, should be something that brings you peace, joy, and contentment. You notice there's no money in there, right? I'm actually saying what it is you will do without getting paid. Now, I mentioned earlier, we all have to do something to make money. But whatever your inner purpose is, if you cannot do it full time, you can at least do it as a hobby, because that'll bring you joy, peace, and contentment in life. So next, we're going to talk about perspective, right? What is perspective? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of statements here, okay? You see these two statements? The first one says, I will not spend excessively beyond my budget. The second one says, I will always live within my budget. Okay, simple enough. The next set of statements, I will not procrastinate, or I will always perform tasks in a timely manner. Do you see what the difference is in these statements? And I know what most of you are thinking, right? Most of you are saying, well, one statement says it's will, the other says it will not. No, that is not the difference between these statements. The difference between these statements is your matter of perspective. Now I'm going to explain perspective to you and try to change your perspective or help you change your perspective. Now, some of you may have seen this before in an earlier video. You've seen me sipping from this glass of water as I've been speaking. And at one point in time, this glass was full of water. Now it's probably half, there's half water in it. And I ask you, what do you see in this glass? I guarantee you, a lot of you, especially those who haven't seen my video on the water glass, are going to say it's half empty or half full or half something, right? Well, here's how I'm going to change your perspective, okay? Think about this. A human being can live for about 20 to 30 days without food. A human being, you and I, can live for about 2 to 3 days without water. You and I cannot even live for the next 2 minutes without air. So look at this glass with a different perspective, right? What you thought was empty is actually something that you need to live for the next 2 minutes. And then what you thought was full was something you need to live for the next 2 or 3 days. So the glass is not half full or half empty. It is always full, just of two different things that are essential for your survival. So how does that translate to perspective, right? We're not talking about developing a positive perspective, being able to look beyond the normal things in life. And here's what I mean. Bear with me, my other computer is acting up. Thank you, McAfee. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So we're going to look at those statements again, right? The statements that were on the previous slide, we're going to look at them again, okay? Now you notice I've highlighted a few words. The first one, I will not spend excessively. Spend excessively is highlighted. The second one, I will live within my budget. Live within my budget is highlighted. I will not procrastinate. And the other part that's highlighted is I will perform tasks in a timely manner. So when I'm talking about a positive perspective, a different perspective, it is a matter of focusing on the desired outcome rather than focusing on avoiding an undesired outcome. All right, let me put it in a different way. Okay, let us say you're driving to work and you're worried about traffic, and you keep telling yourself, I will not hit traffic today, I will not hit traffic today, I will not hit traffic today. Guess what? You will hit traffic today. There's something called the law of attraction. Now that again is a large topic, and I will cover that topic, but it's going to be for another live stream. Okay? The law of attraction is very simple. Whatever you think about and you focus on, you bring about. So if you're focusing on traffic, Doesn't matter you're saying, I don't want traffic. Okay? The universe is hearing traffic, 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 traffic. And traffic will show up. Just like if you say, I will not spend excessively, I will not spend excessively, the universe is hearing spend excessively versus I will live within my budget, where you're focusing on your budget and living within it, right? So this is a very, very important part about how perspective plays a large role in our life. And I highlighted perspective because perspective will let you focus on what you need to recognize as your positives, as your needs, as your negatives, and as your goal. Yes, I said positives, need, negatives, and goal. And that is part of the recognition process of Bravo Motivation. Remember, believe, recognize, act, visualize, and obtain. So when you create your goal, your lifeline, your whatever your internal goal is, what you want to achieve, if you focus on the negative, guess what is going to happen? Law of attraction. You will attract what you don't want to attract. You know what you keep saying, I will not spend excessively. Guess what you're going to attract? Spend excessively is what you're going to attract. So now let us talk about recognize in terms of Bravo Motivation. Okay? Recognize, as defined by Bravo Motivation, it's a process of being brutally honest with yourself. At the fundamental level, tear yourself apart and identify these three things. Okay? What would I really like to be or do? What obstacles are out there that may keep me from achieving my dream? Okay? What skills, capabilities, knowledge that I've acquired in my life so far that will help me achieve those dreams? Now you see why that positive perspective is important, right? So if you start off with what would you really like to do or be, I really like not to be an angry person. Well, guess what? You're focusing on anger, right? Well, I really like not to be such a bad artist. Well, guess what? Try to focus on being a great artist, or being a happy person. Okay? So that's relatively simple, but let's talk about obstacles. What prevents you from achieving your dream? Okay? I'm going to go back to the piano story. We know that I cannot play the piano, but let's say I could, right? And I talked to myself and said, guess what? I believe fundamentally I can play the piano. I have the dexterity in my fingers to play the piano. So now I would have to ask myself, what obstacles could keep me from achieving my dream? Well, one of them could be, hey, I never learned to play the piano. That's okay. Because guess what? That is something you can fix, right? So you never learned to play the piano. Okay, that's an obstacle, but fixable. I don't understand sheet music. Once again, that's an obstacle, but fixable with some lessons. Okay? But ask yourself, what skills, knowledge, capability have you acquired in your life so far? Well, I have an appreciation for music. I have a good ear for music. Doesn't matter I can't read sheet music, I have a good ear for music. I know several good piano teachers. Or I can take a class on reading sheet music at the community college. You see where I'm going with this, right? Find out fundamentally your inner purpose, what you'd like to achieve. And it doesn't have to be your lifelong achievement, because there are many different goals. We have short-term goals and objectives, things you want to do this year, next year, in the next 5 months. You have longer-term goals and objectives, things you want to do the next 2, 3, 4 years. You may know that, you may not. But if you do, great, more power to you. And then your lifelong goals. Here's what I want to be in your life. And that goal is kind of hard for a lot of people to define because it changes. So my recommendation always when you're focusing on these things, focus on the next 6 months to 2 years. Okay, here's what I'd like to do or be in the next 6 months to 2 years, right? So you need to recognize what you want to achieve in the next 6 months to 2 years. Short time frame. Pardon me for a second, I need another sip of water. Glass half empty or full, right? I need the part that's going to keep me alive for the next 2 days. All right, coming back. So, over the next 6 months to 2 years, what is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you fundamentally believe you can do? Then, what are the obstacles that are keeping you from doing that? Now, one of your obstacles could be, hey, guess what? I procrastinate. There's a way to fix that, right? You have to affirm to yourself, and I'll talk about affirmations in a second, that, hey, going forward, I will always do my tasks on time. Do not say, I will not procrastinate, right? Or, the obstacles might be some skill that you are lacking. Well, guess what? You can acquire that skill. You just got to believe that you will put in the effort. I will put in the effort to acquire that skill that I'm lacking. Okay? It is okay to lack skills. If somebody, by the way, I'm using something called OBS Studio for this live stream. 6 months ago, somebody had asked me, hey, how do you use OBS Studio? My answer had been, I do not know. Guess what I did? Thank you, YouTube, and other tutorials and things online. Thank you for people who post videos on those things. That is how I learned. But I didn't go in there saying, oh, I don't think I can learn OBS Studio. I went in there saying, guess what? I am going to figure out how to use OBS Studio. I knew that 6 months ago. Took me a few months to figure out how to use it. Okay? But I did that because I fundamentally believed I could, as well as it was one of those steps that was necessary for my life purpose, for my goal of sharing knowledge. So in the recognized process of Bravo Motivation, we talked about affirmations. If you remember, Bravo, believe, recognize, act, visualize, and obtain. Affirmations without actions mean nothing. Zero, zilch, zip, nada, whatever your favorite word is, okay? If you do not have actions to back up your affirmations, it will not work. For example, I'm going to go back to the piano example, okay? I believe I can, play the piano at some point, right? Fundamentally believe it, okay? I know I need to take lessons. I know where I can find somebody who can teach me the piano. And then I sit and do nothing. I do not act. I do not go and contact that person and try to set up an appointment to learn the piano. I do not go to the community college to try to learn sheet music. Guess what? It doesn't matter how much I affirm that I believe I can play the piano, how much I affirm that I will learn sheet music, how much I affirm that I will take classes to learn how to play the piano, if I do not act. Okay? So, my father, he's no longer with us, God rest his soul, he used to say, you have to sit and with your mouth open for a very, very, very long time before a baked potato falls into it. All right? So, you can believe that you're going to get a baked potato, but guess what? You may have to put in some effort. Okay? You cannot just sit there and say, I believe, I believe, I believe. I'm going to give you one more example of this I believe. Okay? It's an anecdote, and it's been around for many decades, and I've heard many versions of it. So this is the version I prefer. All right. Person had a house next to a river, and the river started to flood. The person had a lot of faith in God, and he says, well, I know God is going to save me. So he just sat in his house. His neighbors were evacuating before the floods arrived. He says, I know God's going to save me. His neighbors say, listen, we're driving. We have room in our car for one more person. Okay, hop in. Let's go. No. God's going to save me. The neighbors leave. The floods start coming. Now they reach the steps of his house. When they reach the steps of his house, there's about 2 feet of water. The fire department comes by. They're in this big red truck with the big tires, and they're like, "Hey, sir, do you want to evacuate? Because the water is coming. We don't know how much it's going to come up to." No, I don't need to evacuate. God's going to save me. I believe that. Fundamentally, I believe that. I affirm that God's going to save me. Fire department says, "Okay, this is our last call. We're going around the neighborhood. After that, our truck will not make it in here." And he says, "No, I affirm, I believe." And the fire truck leaves. Then the water comes up to about inside his door. There's about 2 feet of water in his house now. He's standing in 2 feet of water. The Coast Guard helicopter comes by, right? And they're like, "Hey, sir, you're the last person left in the neighborhood. This is our last tour we're doing around. We're trying to see if there's anybody. We can drop you a ladder. You can climb up the ladder. The helicopter will take you inland." "No, I affirm, I believe," firmly, with complete affirmation, complete belief that God's going to save me. Guess what? He stays there. The water rises, he drowns. He makes his way up to heaven, stands at heaven's gates, sees God and says, "God, I believed in you. I affirmed in that belief. I waited for you, but you let me drown." And you know what God replies? God says, "Well, I sent you a neighbor with a space in his car to take you. Well, you didn't take that, so I sent you the fire truck when the water was 2 feet depth. Then when the water is at 4 feet depth, I sent you the helicopter, but you didn't climb on that ladder. What more do you want me to do?" Right? So this is what I'm saying. I know it's a funny anecdote, but it emphasizes a very big point. Action is always required. Belief alone does not take you there. Belief is necessary, okay? If you do not believe fundamentally that you can do something, you will never do it. Belief is necessary. It is vital, okay? Believe. That's why it's the first step in Bravo Motivation. Recognizing your skills, your abilities, your obstacles, that is also vital, okay? But when you get to your affirmation, action is equally vital. If you do not act, all of the belief, the recognition, the affirmations are useless. I'm sorry to say it this way, but action is always required. And action, even though it's the center step of Bravo Motivation, in my mind, is one of the most important steps. So let's talk about action. So the act or the steps of action is one of the most important steps in Bravo Motivation. And I'm going to use myself as an example, right? I've said before, my goal is to spread knowledge, okay? The actions are the positive steps, okay? You need to identify the steps, the positive actions that you take to overcome any obstacles, right? And to achieve your goal or your life's purpose. I mentioned earlier, my purpose, these last decade or so has been to share knowledge. So before COVID, okay, I had my corporate job, as I like to call it, my day job, with my consulting company. But every Friday, or not every Friday, 2-3 times a month on Fridays, my wife and I would fly to a different city. I would have an auditorium with a couple hundred people, and I would give a speech about Bravo Motivation, and motivate people in person. I loved doing that, and we would go to these different cities, and we got to see a lot of cities. Didn't matter, we didn't make a whole lot of money, because by the time we counted the airfare and how much you paid for the auditorium and everything, we broke even. We didn't lose money. But since that was my passion, and I had a different way of earning an income to make a living, right, I kept doing that. But then what happened? COVID happened. Everything shut down. Social distancing. Had I tried to have a gathering of 100 people, they would have probably thrown me in jail. Okay, the powers that be, or fined me or something. You know what I mean? Or prevented me from having it. So I had to go through, during the time of COVID, this process of figuring out, okay, how am I going to disseminate knowledge? Okay. Well, guess what? I ended up having to learn a whole bunch of things. Like I said, OBS Studio, how to create videos on YouTube, right? How to, in this case here, how to join my face, which you're seeing on the live stream, along with the PowerPoint, running 3 monitors. So I had to act, right? I had to take positive steps, and those steps included learning, practicing, trying, in order to overcome the obstacles of COVID. And guess what? I am disseminating knowledge. And I don't have to fly somewhere to do it. I can sit here and do it. I don't have to rent an auditorium. Now, once in a while, I do that because I like being in public. However, I took actions. First, I identified the actions that I needed to take, right? Then I took those actions. And I am achieving my goals. Do you believe I'm achieving my goals? Are you learning something today? Yes? Well, I'm achieving my goals. I'm achieving my life purpose. But you see what I'm saying? I believed that my life purpose was disseminating knowledge. I believed I had the knowledge to share. I had the means to share it. I recognized the things I needed to do, right? I had to change the things that I needed to do for sharing knowledge because of COVID. A different stimuli happened and things changed. Well, I recognized what I needed to do, what obstacles were in my way. For example, during COVID, cannot have people gathered. I identified things that I needed to do, as part of the recognition process in order to disseminate knowledge without gathering 100, 200 people in an auditorium. Then I acted, right? I identified the actions, I learned, I practiced, and here I am. So we have covered believe, recognize, and act. And now I'm going to briefly touch upon visualize and obtain, as I mentioned earlier. And I've not forgotten about that ebook. Don't worry. Okay. So let's talk about visualize. All right. The visualization process is the process of convincing your subconscious that you're already living your dream. Sounds impossible, but it is not. I'll tell you why in a second. All right. The visualization process programs your subconscious mind to accept the reality. Okay, to accept it. Now, in the 1990s, or it was probably 93, 94, some scientists conducted an experiment with Olympic athletes. Okay, they took these runners and things like that, and they had them lay in a bed. They connected all the electrodes to them. Right? Actually, no, I jumped a step. First, they connected the electrodes to their heads and had them run on a treadmill, right? Like they were running a race. And they recorded what parts of their brains fired, right? And they created a heat map of the brain that showed, hey, these parts of the brain fire when they're running. Then they let them rest, calm down, come back the next day, in a calm state of mind, had them lay on a bed in a hospital setting, scientific setting, attached the same electrodes to the head and said, now imagine, right, in your head, that you're rerunning that race on the treadmill, the one that you ran yesterday. Just imagine you're rerunning it. And guess what? When they compared the heat maps, they were identical. There wasn't even a 1% difference in those heat maps of their brains. So in their brains, even though they were laying on the bed with their eyes closed, they were not moving any muscles. Their brain was acting as if they were still running that race that they ran the previous day on the treadmill. The running exercise they did on the treadmill. Olympic athletes, and a lot of athletes, right? I mean, you look at the weightlifters, somebody lifts 1,000 pounds. Not humanly possible. That's what we think. But they believe it is. They visualize it in their head, right? And that visualization process has convinced their subconscious they can do it until you practice visualization. Okay? And there are many processes in visualization, vision boards, visualization exercises, and we're going to go through that in a lot of depth later on in our next live stream. Visualization is important, but trust me, over the next 3 weeks, doing believe, recognize, and the actions, that's going to keep you occupied. Okay, this is not a quick process. It works, but just like everything in life that is worth doing, it takes a specific amount of time. Now, let me briefly discuss obtain. Why is obtain important? Okay, whoops, I jumped a slide. Welcome to live stream, right? Why is obtain important? Okay, obtain is the process of accepting and enjoying what you've learned. A lot of people have forgotten how to take joy, okay, in their achievements. Most people, they achieve. You want to be a manager, you get to be a manager. Guess what? The next day they're like, okay, what do I need to do to be a director? You need to enjoy. And I talk to people about having an attitude of gratitude. In one of my other videos I mentioned, okay, the best way to achieve your dreams is to be thankful for what you have today. Okay, have that attitude of gratitude. Being thankful creates a sense within you of joy and thankfulness that actually propels you towards your goals. We will talk about this also in detail in our next live stream. Now that brings us to, I had promised you all that we're going to give you this book, free ebook. It's a $29 book. So it is at https://stan.store/Atul Uchil/P as in Papa /live stream free. The link is up here. Give me a second. I will put it in the chat as well so you can copy the link. Okay. I'm not going away. Hang on. When you click on this link, it's going to take you to this screen here, and all it'll ask you for is your name and your email address. This is something that I've been fighting with Stan Store. They will not release a product without a name and email address. I don't need it, but that's what you need to do. All you need to do is enter your name and email address. No physical address, no credit card, no nothing. Okay, just your name and email address, and the link is still up here. You can see it. While you guys are looking at the link, I'm going to look at the chat. I promised you that I will respond to any questions you have. So I'm going to look at the chat, and then I'm going to start answering questions. So I'm going to leave this up here while you folks either note this down, screenshot this page, and remember, like I said, the link is going to be active just for 12 hours starting now. The clock starts now, 12 hours, because I cannot give my ebooks away free all the time. Like I said, I have to make some money to pay bills, okay? So this book is free. Let me look at the chat.